Hey guys, Michael Ketchen here with another episode of the Michael Ketchen Show. No Matthew Hitchcock today because I'm in Montana and he's not, so sucks to be him. But I'm joined by another Matt, good friend of mine, Matthew Ryan, of Bozeman, Montana, formerly of St. Louis.
Yep.
How we doing, Matt?
Good. Really good. It's
Thanks
good to see
for coming in. We've been trying to do this for a while, I think.
Yeah, I think I bailed on the last one.
You did, and we'll blame producer Jake Bennett for not being able to secure that. That's
Yep.
right, Bennett Studios on Instagram, give him shit.
Yep.
But I was excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
You're one of my favorite people I've connected with out here. We're in the process, we should tell everybody, of buying my forever ranch home out here finally. Thank you.
Yeah.
Only took you long enough. What the fuck? It's been a
I don't
couple of
know.
years.
It's hard to find that property.
It really is. I can't wait. But I wanted to talk to you because we met at one of my favorite places, Cigar Lounge, Timberland Lounge. And I just like the way you think, like the way you were with people. And I was very interested in kind of getting to know you more because usually those who follow along know I hate real estate agents.
Yep. I do too.
They're usually worthless.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not great transactionally, but you actually make it feel like a genuine relationship. Yeah. So before we get into anything, I want to know, I know you have some family history. Where's that customer service and the history come from with that?
Yeah. So there's long history. My grandmother bought into a small real estate brokerage in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep.
And I think that was late 60s. And she passed before I was born, so I never got to meet her. But my father took that over in the mid 70s. Mm-hmm. He was finishing his MBA at WashU in St. Louis. Was really just there doing back end bookkeeping, that kind of stuff for the brokerage. And she had a short battle with lung cancer. And when she lost that battle, my father took over her portion of the business with a partner. At the time, it was a smaller brokerage, one office. During the Carter-Reagan election, my dad made the decision that if Carter won, he was going to sell to the partner and get out. And if Reagan won, he was going to buy the partner out, which is what happened. And then he grew that to 3 offices. The brokerage is Lar McCarthy in St. Louis. It's primarily a luxury brokerage there. And he sold to Coldwell Banker in 2003, I think it was finalized. And the kind of pride that we have in the family in that was Coldwell Banker was going around buying everybody up during that period of time. And most of those brokerages that Coldwell Banker bought, it became, like in Minneapolis, it was Coldwell Banker Burnett. Like it kept the name but added Coldwell Banker, where today Lar McCarthy is still the only name to it.
So it's still out
So they
there,
didn't even
still
add
going.
Coldwell Banker to it.
Yeah, Grandma's legacy going and everything. I didn't know that. Look at this. Grandma Ryan out here just doing it.
Yeah. And my first experience in it was, I think at 10 years old, before internet, every summer I had to go in the basement and pick up the 7-year-old files and carry them to the dumpster outside. And that was where kind of real estate became interesting to me. Yeah. And I always, who knows what I thought as a 10-year-old, other than the fact that I was always curious looking through the files on why this family bought this home at that time when these other ones were available and closing at the same period. Yeah. And so I was always really kind of curious about that problem or what it solved. But then, we just went on with it as a family, and it's something my dad and I always talked about, and I've always been curious about it. And I took another avenue outside of college after that because passion project, and then also, even though my dad's my best friend, I think we all try to avoid becoming our father at some point entirely. And that was like the nail in the coffin. Okay, I'm him now.
And that's where you're like, you're going to go a different route, and then you went that way. Okay.
Yep.
And that's where I'm assuming that the sales, the customer service comes from.
Yes.
Because, I led with the ranch story to show we have known each other now for 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been. Yeah. And it has never once felt transactional. You've showed me a couple properties, we've done everything, but what I've always been impressed with you, I'll call you up. Hey, Matt, can I get a CMA? Hey, Matt, it's literally this property happened. I was leaving. I was on my way to the airport. Yeah. You're like, sure.
We couldn't see it because you were getting on a plane.
And that speaks to your character, and that comes from somewhere with that background. That's why I was curious about the family history, because the lesson and the takeaway, and the reason I wanted to start with that, for everybody out there in any sales job and any relationship-driven business, if you treat it like a genuine relationship, the sales will follow. Yeah. If you treat it like a transaction, the money usually doesn't follow.
Right. And I think that's the problem in our industry. Is so much of it is transactional. I think it's 2 out of 10 sellers use their previous agent. And it's because they don't hear from them again. Yep. And there's probably other reasons in there too, but you always look to the problem to solve. And that's where I focus on that relationship piece and just being of value, trying to be helpful, trying to solve the problem and focus on those items because nobody wants to be sold. Fortunately, real estate is one of those things that everybody wants to talk about, so I don't have to bring it up. But it's we don't have a good reputation in our industry, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I can go on a whole other rabbit hole on that item with our associations and everything along those lines. But the reality is that most transactions take place around life. You know, people move because of life events. It's the kid coming, the divorce, the job change, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And at that time, they need someone to solve a problem. They don't need to be sold on anything.
Yeah. And you also did something even today for the first time that it's just little subtle things. I asked you for a CMA for my current property out here. You were the first CMA I've ever got where it actually had what my net proceeds would be.
Really?
I have never seen another agent do that.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I look at that number. I said, oh, baby, that's a good number.
Yeah.
That's a damn good number. It had everything right there going. I thought that was smart. But that leads to kind of the next thing we're touching the market out here. If you recall a conversation you and I had a couple of years ago about Bozeman, I said, hey, this is going to happen. There's going to be natural rent softening. They're overbuilding. Vacancy is going to creep up.
Yeah.
They need to shut the fuck up about all the short-term rental regulations. It doesn't make any sense. They went ahead. They passed the short-term rental regulations, which has gone awful by all accounts. And now their vacancy is creeping up. They're going to have an oversupply issue. They're hurting the tourism industry. Where are we at with this in the market right now, in your opinion, and how do we get out of this mess?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I'll point out is we have a lack of single family home. And when rates went up, all that building and spec home and all that work kind of really slowed down. But on the condo development and apartment buildings and those style of units, they just kept on going. And a lot of that is because it's big money out of state. They can handle the loss for a period of time and handle those vacancies. But I don't know where the number's at exactly right now, but I know when we spoke about it, there was between now and 2030, there was, I think, 5,000 units or 6,000 units that were planned.
I think vacancy just hit, it's close to 10% now in Bozeman, if not over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a problem because there's such a demand for single family home. You know, everybody thinks about moving to Montana and we're going to have all the space and land and all these things. And the design plan for the development of the valley is small lot and then high density. At least within Bozeman proper. The short-term rental adds to that. It's capped at 700, I think, was what was grandfathered in. There's no new in Bozeman proper. And then even the county's starting to tie down on that. Belgrade has been the only one that's in favor of it.
Some common sense has finally entered the arena.
Yeah. And I think Belgrade, I was in a meeting the other week where they were planning that Belgrade's going to be the biggest city in Montana in the long run, bigger than Billings and other metro areas. But the short-term rental piece that we need to solve is we had a group of individuals here that I'm going to assume had money backing from the hotels or something along those lines. Also in tune with some of the other political ideologies on rent ceilings and those types of things that only harm the market. You know, I know one of the people that was running for the city commission, their solution to affordable housing was a moratorium on all new building.
What's this moron's name? Are they still running?
I can't remember. I don't think he won.
Oh, fuck that guy.
So yeah, and it's just simple supply and demand.
Yeah.
You know, the one workaround we had or thought we had that on short-term rentals was to sell it as an LLC and sell the business. Yeah. And because the permits go with the owner. But they're finding ways to stop that now too.
Well, what kills me though, and this is where people there's all these studies out there, there's all these economic studies, there's all this data that shows short-term rentals do not restrict and limit housing. Yeah. What's the average price right now in Bozeman? Isn't it like 900,000 or something like that?
Yeah, median price is high 800s, low 900s.
Please, Jake, make sure this is a clip so people understand. That is considered a jumbo mortgage in Montana, is it not?
We're 809.
So you are not even eligible for an FHA first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
So you're banning a product that's above the first-time home buyer's eligibility, claiming those are the exact people you're hurting.
Right.
It's the craziest shit.
Because the entry point for affordability for the most part is going to be multifamily. It's going to be townhouse condo, and those HOAs already have regulations mostly, preventing short-term rental.
And I want to say something there because we've never talked about this.
Yeah.
I try to tell people when I'm looking to buy an STR, when I'm looking to buy a short-term rental, I will avoid HOAs unless I absolutely have to buy in and they're really existing and they're all rental. The HOA is built around vacation rentals like my one in South Carolina was. Because what people don't understand, every state, the legislation is pretty much failed for short-term rentals. Yeah. There's hits and misses here and there, but HOAs are different. You're voluntarily buying in to something. You're choosing
There's
to
an
go
agreed
in.
upon set of structure.
the government should not be allowed to tell me what to do with my property, within reason. I'm not saying, go, break, laws, don't go grow, and distribute heroin or something,
Right.
but there's logic and common sense and treating it as logic. I mean, I'm dealing with this in one of my markets right now. The town passed an ordinance. They let the fire chief design the ordinance. So what did he do? He came in and treated it like a halfway house, like a lodging house.
And that's what we used to, when I was in, prior to real estate, in that 10-year gap, I was in a business that was sober housing.
Yep.
And so we had 11 single family homes, 9 in the Twin Cities, 2 in Aspen Valley in Carbondale, Colorado. And you couldn't provide services within the house. And the fire marshal was who decided what services were. And so when we looked at all the life skills and all those pieces, I actually had to be, as the clinical director, had to be a 1099 and have an office space that we brought the clients to.
Well, this fire chief thought he could bully me.
Yeah.
So I got on with the town manager, and the bozo says, he says, single family rentals were never designed, single family homes were never designed to be rentals. I said, in your opinion. And then he started getting an attitude. We started going back and forth. And I said, explain to me your logic. And he goes, well, what you're doing is a lodging house. I said, wait a minute. He goes, yeah. He goes, you don't have a single family house anymore. I said, okay. So I'm going to call the town manager and I want my properties reassessed. And that's when he realized, like, okay, I kind of stepped in it.
Yep.
But we're looking into it. The point is, it's so short-sighted. This entire town is built around tourism. And the reason I called, I said, look, guys, I'll do whatever. I've never had a problem with the town. I just want to point out some stuff to you. My properties sit on the main road into town. Mm-hmm. Everybody's driving by these properties. You're a tourist town going back 150 years. You really want eyesores, because what they're doing is they're making you put in new egress windows and cutting up walls and exit signs, just destroying these beautiful pieces of property with something that is so short-sighted. And it's, again, the government's just going to government. And it's the same thing here in Bozeman. And it's a problem. And I was curious for your take about it, for where it's going, because I know the logic needs to get restored. Yeah. Right.
And the one thing that all those that ran for banning them and were behind that push all thought it would create more inventory.
How's that going?
Not one has come to the market that I'm aware of, because no one's selling them, and it's not. And if they did shut them down, like they originally were going to ban them all outright, it's how many jobs do you impact on all the services that go into managing a short-term rental, all the cleaning, lawn care, all those elements,
all the employees, all the vendors, the economy. I mean, I've owned a short-term rental now in Bozeman between the two houses for coming up on 6 years.
Yep.
I'm always 90% occupied for the year.
Yep.
I'm bringing all that tourism in. What people never think about, it's like the ripple effect, right? You drop a pebble in a pond, it makes ripples. Mm-hmm. People think the problem right in front of them, they're short-sighted. What happens when you start getting those ripples out, right? The bars, the restaurants, the amenities, the gyms, the hotels, everything gets hit by one of those ripples. So when you shut it down and restrict it, I mean, it's the craziest thing in the world. But
it really is. And the element with short-term rentals too, it's like I can go to the point of, all right, we don't want an entire block in a neighborhood that's got kids and families and want the family neighborhood to be all rentals and all short-term rentals and people coming in and out. But this ability to come into a city and completely shut it down when our core industry is tourism, between Yellowstone and Bridger and Big Sky and all these different elements, it makes no sense. Now, the economic impact of it is also coming true, because I think we've got 26 current hotels that are being built or under development, and they are almost doubling the amount of available hotel rooms. And that's just a weird correlation that happened to line up with that as well.
Isn't that awkward how that all worked? That's the same thing happened in County Bunkport. I predicted it. It was during COVID when everything was shutting down. All of a sudden, all this private equity was coming in and buying up these boutique hotels.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, they're talking about legislation, and it's like, guys, like, come on. You say it for the mom and pop. It's funny. They attack the short-term rental investor, the guy who can build wealth, the mom and pop, the me, Matt Hannahs, right?
Yep.
To back private equity.
Yep.
And it's these people, they can't get out of their own fucking ways.
Follow the money.
Speaking of getting out of ways and making a change, I know we're going to touch on something that I think is near and dear to you. Prior to real estate, I know you're battling some demons you were able to conquer. You want to speak to that a little bit and see if there's anybody who can help with this?
Absolutely. I am incredibly grateful that this coming year I will be celebrating 20 years of sobriety.
That's amazing.
So I got out to Bozeman originally because we also grew up part-time in Jackson, Wyoming. And so my sisters moved up to Bozeman to go to school in the mid-90s. I followed them early 2000s. I was a ski bum pothead partier.
That would have been something.
Yeah, and that lasted about 5 years. And I was given the gift to go to treatment in Minnesota in 2005, June of that year. Actually, sobriety date was Father's Day weekend, which is another layer to my dad's and my relationship. But there are so many elements to that we don't have time to get into of what allowed me, between the group of men that I got sober with, the people that were there to support me and show me the way, that ended up leading into my initial career, which my initial license was licensed drug and alcohol counselor, and then I did master's work in clinical psych. A part of that business that I was involved in, St. Paul Sober Living, that's still up and running in St. Paul with Chris Edrington, the original founder, or the founder and owner. They, obviously we all know addiction continues to be a huge issue. And that is one of those things that I speak openly and freely, that I lead with typically, just because everybody knows somebody, whether it's a friend or uncle or loved one that has dealt or is dealing with addiction. And there were people that answered their phone for me. And that is kind of one of my main pieces that my phone's always on.
And I want to go deeper there for a second.
Yeah, please.
Because you can speak to something that we haven't touched on this show yet. And I'm sure, like, to your point, everyone does know somebody. What is that? Before we go forward, to go back, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who deal with that. How do you speak to that kind of like, okay, I know this is a rock bottom moment. What is that like? Because I know you as this very put together, very personable, and I'm sure you could even put on the mask living in public. I mean, you're a smart guy. What is that like? I mean, take somebody through that hell you live in. Yeah,
and it was years, because I started smoking pot when I was 13, and didn't drink much in high school just because I was I played basketball and pretty much all year round, and that ran everything. And I got very good at making everything look good. Had decent grades, never late for curfew, all those things. I figured
Checking all the boxes.
And one of the addiction things is you find out that if you present very well and you make everything look going well, like it's going well, people kind of leave you alone, especially as a teenager. And that continued in high school. But when I moved 1,000 miles away from my family and didn't know anybody and rebuilt, kind of the rails came off, but I kept it together because I'd never missed a day of work. There were those check boxes that
to
always
the public,
look good.
you're looking like, hey, Matt's great. Matt's got his shit going.
But it was all internal. It was my own struggles, kind of, I've yet to find a better term, but really insecurities. Like I look at my high school picture, and I was captain of the basketball team, winning state championship, dating the captain of the cheerleading squad, and everything looked great, popular, all that stuff.
I like that you worked the cheerleading line, and that's good. That was smart.
And even with my best friends, I always felt that they were closer to each other than I was to them. There was always something. You'll hear a lot of recovering alcoholics, and even those that aren't recovering, talk about there was something that was different.
You just felt like almost like a layer
on the outside,
or something between you. Yeah.
And as soon as I smoked weed or drank, that went away. And then when addiction comes in, you cross that line, you don't see it. And it's still too late. And the moment that took place, there was a bunch of events here and there. A year before I got sober, I got a DUI. And at that time, my father lived in Jackson, and he'd come up once every 1 or 2 months, see my sisters. He and I'd always have a meal that was kind of business. Like, how are your grades? How are this? And I was telling him how great my semester had gone. At lunch, and about 3 minutes after saying that, my econ professor sat down and said, "Matt, what happened to you this semester? You're doing so well, and you just stopped coming." And we finished that lunch, and we got in his car, and I told him I need help. Couldn't stop drinking. Had been trying to stop drinking. Had been trying to stop smoking weed, and every day I'd wake up that morning and say, "I'm not going to the bar this afternoon." And when I got off work, there was zero ability to prevent me going there.
There's no framework, no guardrails around it.
No, and it was it becomes an obsessive thought, and that's really what separates addiction, is that there's a mental component and a medical component. The mental component is obsessive intrusive thoughts that you cannot stop, and oftentimes too, it's kind of even if you're sober and you go to drink, it happens so quickly that you don't even realize it until after the fact. Wow. And it has nothing to do with your intention or what you want. It's just part of that. And unfortunately, I was able to get help through grace of God.
What did he say to you in the car? Was he shocked? Did he know?
Yes.
Was he kind of like, what the fuck?
He knew something was wrong. Yeah. My father was, NBA, military, Army intelligence in Vietnam, straight arrow.
Reading people.
Yeah, very good. But when you have a lost son, you're kind of blind. You don't want to see it. My dad never, even though he grew up in the 60s, he was a I think campus security at University of Washington in the 60s. So like he never smoked weed, never like didn't know that world at all. And from a family background that was well-to-do and put together, there's a lot of...
You're breaking the image.
Exactly. And my father is the first person to help somebody, but at the same time, he just didn't know. There was no resources in the early 2000s, like where to start. And so was he surprised? No. It answered some questions for him, for sure. He knew that he had a kid that was having a hard time keeping it together. But his immediate reaction was help. And so I moved in with him in Jackson for 2 weeks and started going to AA meetings. And
good on Papa Ryan out here.
He basically said, here's a list of meetings in Jackson. And then, a week goes by and he said, okay, you can't stay here. You can either go figure it out on your own or you can go to Hazelden in Minnesota. And I went to the AA meeting the next morning, told them the scenario, and all of them said to go to treatment. And so I was done. I remember having the thought of like, I need to stop doing what I want to do and I need to start doing what I need to do.
That's crazy.
And it was a totally different path. I fought along the way and tried to figure out my ways out.
We're getting the nice finished product here. We're not seeing
now you got to go to the halfway house. Well, no, we can't. That doesn't work, and all the excuses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of now funny stories around that, but that were not funny for my family during that time. But fortunately, we can joke about it now, and it's an entirely different world. And,
that's amazing.
And now I get to have a cigar with my dad every week and share the success of life.
Your dad smokes cigars?
Oh yeah,
what's
all day.
Smoke?
Really bad. There's Spurt Churchills.
A what?
Yeah, he smokes a box.
Do you know how bougie of cigars I smoke? If I don't have a Davidoff or a Cohiba, I don't know what the fuck this is.
I give him really good cigars, and he's like, "Don't waste it on me." Like,
I love this guy.
And so he smokes two. He lives on Bridger Creek on the golf course here.
Can he talk to Hannah? So he's 82, having 2 cigars a day.
Yep. And it is
Hannah
great
Ketchen,
health.
did you hear that?
Great health, no issues. He's 82
we
with
just
one
talking
medication.
about nicotine. Nicotine has all these superpowers.
Yeah.
See, I think the government banned our cigars because they didn't want us to have the superpowers of nicotine.
Yep.
This is my
the
theory.
other superpower that I'll
it.
put, because I'm following it, is my dad reads probably 3 to 5 books a week.
Dude.
Still. And just consumes.
Today, I got to stop fucking doom scrolling.
And he is sharp as a tack. And I don't read nearly as much as he does.
I got to get back on it.
Yeah.
I was literally on the plane over here today, and I'm like, I used to be so disciplined about social media, and now like I'm to the point. I think I want to give Danielle, who runs my my account, kind of like a different password and try to stay off of it.
Yeah,
because I'm wasting. So like if I love work, obviously, so real estate's different. I'll just go all day.
Right.
But whenever I have a free moment now, I'm catching myself like before I pick up a book, I do something different. Now I'm finding myself doom scrolling, and that shit like needs to stop.
Absolutely.
So
and same for me as somebody that, about a year ago, I was challenged to start creating content and have been doing that consistently for the last year. And also as a father of 3 boys, like that phone is the worst part of my life.
Yeah.
And part of it is needed for work and obviously and all that, but the impact on presence in the home, I think is a huge problem that we're going to be facing going forward in our society.
I think we need to hold each other accountable to something here.
100%.
How are we going to do this? What are we going to do here?
I don't know. I do well with shame.
You do well with shame. Have you back on and be like, yo, Matt, you fucking, you didn't do that. We're going to come up with some kind of challenge. We'll put it on social media. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll, dude, I've been thinking about deleting Facebook. I feel like it's just the trailer park trash of social media.
I have Facebook, but I don't use it.
Just definitely killed the algorithm on this podcast. Zuckerberg's like, all right, fucker, I'll show you what we're doing. No, it's just, I go on and I'm like, okay, now Facebook's either an ad for some white trash product or it's someone whose life didn't work out complaining about something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you got the time to complain on social media about your shitty life, here's a hint. You can do something about your shitty life.
Yeah, take some action.
And I don't understand. Yeah, don't get me going to taking action.
Yeah.
Taking action is another big thing you do. I want to make sure I touch on, because as you know, veterans are near and dear to me. We do a lot with them. You do something pretty cool too. We were talking about the lounge.
Yeah.
Walk me through what you got going on there.
Yeah. So I volunteer with a group called Big Sky Bravery here in Bozeman.
Yep.
We are one of the only volunteer support and nonprofits that is focused on active duty special operation forces.
Yep.
And so the quick backstory on it is Josh McCann, his brother-in-law Jeremy, was a active duty. Did I think 14 tours and 7 years of active combat. And if I remember the story correctly, every time Jeremy came back and visited, Josh could see the struggle in that, especially with that many deployments. And the special operation community took the biggest brunt of all the loss in our military services from what I've seen and read. And so he took Jeremy out for a week-long trip in Montana. And when they came out, Jeremy's like, I need all my guys doing that. So we take active duty special operations out for week-long decompression trips. We're not therapeutic. We're not clinical. We don't do anything along those lines. It is really introducing them to our playground. Yeah. And so my trip last June.
Tell us a little bit. What's called, like fly fish, like the hike, all that shit.
So day one, we pick them up, bring them back to our shop. We've got an incredible shop here in Bozeman that is just ultimate playground toys.
You must really love these guys. I haven't even been to the shop. This is bullshit. I'm getting screwed over here.
We'll see if we can get you through that. But we take them back, we outfit them, get them all their gear's taken care of. They don't lift a finger. They don't pay a dime. We introduce them to the staff, feed them, and then we head out to where we're going. That trip, we went down to Big Sky, settled into the house. The next day, went for a hike for the afternoon and just took that. Day one is usually an easy day. And then what was it? Day two, took them side by side. So off road, about 14 miles back into the backcountry. Camped overnight. We had, I think, storm rolled through that night, and there was an incredible lightning show as we're all huddling in our tents.
Man.
Ripped out that next day. The next day we went trap and skeet shooting in Moonlight Basin. We then fly fishing in Madison for a day. So they're 5-day trips. I've got one in April that will be a ski trip. So we'll ski 2 days, snowmobile in the backcountry 1 day. Typically we'll ski another day, but they're pretty worn after that. If you haven't snowmobiled, you're basically wrestling a refrigerator, and it's not. It wrecks you if you're not doing it a lot. And so we figure out, go dog sled or do something.
Do something kind of cool, yeah.
Yeah, and we're cooking all the meals, taking care of them, and it has been one of the most impactful things. I've done a lot of really cool stuff in my life, and
that sounds like it's got to be up there, though.
Yeah, and from the get-go, it was, there was a little bit of that. Like, I know I'm a good guy, but these guys are.
First time someone's ever called themselves a good guy in the show, by the way.
Right.
So,
well,
come on. I know the ego's up there, but it's like, come on.
I'll let you guys decide that. But
Matt Ryan is a good guy for those watching this.
It's like, what do I have to offer these guys in the back of my mind? And my buddy Ron that invited me into it said, you'll find out. We have a group chat, and it is active every week. They brought us out. The recipients from our trip last June brought us out to their spot and showed us around and gave us a tour and all those types of things. And it is ongoing, real relationships built. And there were some pretty impactful statements from those recipients during the trip, especially at the end on the true impact that it had on them. And because that community gets pretty isolated.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're just talking about life, parenting, and all these different elements that I don't think they get to have the opportunity to have a lot of that conversation.
And that's amazing, man. And that's what we're trying to do with Project 22 to 22 too, is we're really trying to help, with the ibogaine treatment, and we partnered up with vets and Marcus and Amber Capone. We're trying to raise a bunch of money for them. And we're also trying to help. We haven't even really touched on the third element of that yet. We're trying to help them also transition really into the workforce, not just do the typical go get an MBA, do some bullshit. We're trying to get there. Where can people donate to that cause, get in touch? Where can they learn more?
Yeah, bigskybravery.org. It walks through the whole program, what we do, who we are, who we're focused on. Obviously, there's opportunities to donate there. I do a lot on my social media around it too, which is mattryan.bozemanrealestate on Instagram. And so those, always feel free to message around that or the addiction piece. Any way that I can be a support or help in either of those avenues.
Love that.
Yeah, just want to make life better.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here because I appreciate you. You're truly one of my favorite people, Matthew Ryan. And until next time, bet on yourself.